Hey guys, welcome back to more homeowner association stories. In this video, a ridiculous HOA Karen trespassed on my property while I was absent and claimed that she reserved my 200-year-old farm for 125 guests. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one starts like this. So I live on a 200-year-old farm that has been in my family since before any of the neighborhoods or cul-de-sacs even existed around here. The farmhouse is old and timber and stone, and the barn looks like a postcard. There's a pond, a small orchard, and enough open field that our dog can run until she forgets her name. I don't really farm at scale, it's more a hobby and heritage, honey, a little produce, occasional Christmas trees, and hay that a neighbor cuts and bales. The rest is just me fixing things that break and paying taxes. Over the last decade, development crept up like ivy. On one side of my property line you've got ranch houses from the 70s, and on the other side there's a newer subdivision with an HOA, the type that has glossy flyers and a logo like a fancy spa. Their sign at the entrance has words like estates and preserve, which always makes me laugh because the only thing they seem to preserve is the right shade of beige for garage doors. My driveway though is long gravel and clearly marked by two granite posts that my great-grandfather set with a hand-cranked winch. There's a wooden sign that says private farm, no trespassing, appointments only. It's not ambiguous. I sometimes host small photography sessions when the apple trees bloom or sell honey out of the mudroom, otherwise this is my home. I'm a pretty chill guy, and my general policy is live and let live. As long as people don't dump trash or mess with my animals, I try to be a good neighbor. Well, unfortunately, the HOA next door elected a president and I will call the HOA Karen. She had the haircut and she had the next door posts. She had that tone of voice that made every sentence sound like a complaint to a manager. Before she moved in, I rarely heard from this HOA. Afterwards, though, my mailbox started getting friendly reminders about things that are none of their business, stuff like how my fencing visible from the public right-of-way lacks aesthetic cohesion with the community. My fence has been there since before their subdivision was dirt. I would email them politely explaining that they don't have jurisdiction over my property. But they would just reply with a soft threat about community standards, and I would ignore it and go fix a tractor belt. A few small things happened that foreshadowed the main event. There were subtle trespasses like a family using my pond for photos without asking. The first time I gave them a quick heads up, the second time I put up a camera and a second sign near the bend in the driveway where people like to pretend a private road is public if they angle their camera just right. I posted some pictures on our community Facebook page, faces blurred, asking people to please reach out first. Most folks were apologetic. A few people made that weird entitled comment like, if you live near an HOA, you should expect visitors, which is a fascinating logical leap. About 6 months before the blow-up, I get a note slipped under my front door. The note says, "We are excited to partner with our neighbor to host neighborhood events." It had a list of dates and a request to confirm which date I preferred. I laughed. I called the number. A cheerful committee member said that they would love to rent my event space for the spring social, and I explained we were not an event venue. She sincerely thought that we were though. I pointed her to the county property records and told her that we are zoned agricultural residential, and she apologized and said she would update the board. That was that, I thought, but fast forward a bit, a friend of mine out of state had an accident and needed help for a week. I secured the house, let my neighbor who helps me with the hay know that I'd be gone, set some timers on lights and asked my cousin to swing by to feed the barn cats and check on the dog when my wife was at work. Everything normal. I was gone for 4 days when I got a text from my cousin that read, are you hosting a wedding? Mind you, it is midweek, I'm 5 hours away. My cousin sends a photo, folding chairs lined up on my lawn facing the barn, a big cheap plywood sign that says "Welcome to the Spring Gala" with the HOA's leafy logo attached, a rental truck parked nose first into my meadow, people were milling around in pastel outfits, a couple of them were dragging a tent out of the truck, and the kicker, there was a sandwich board at my driveway that said "Event parking," like they were directing traffic. My blood pressure went through the roof so fast my ears rang. I called my cousin and he's like, "There's a lady with a clipboard telling me she reserved the farm. Says the HOA spoke to the owner." Well, that owner would be me, the guy who did not speak to anyone. I told him to keep his cool and record everything. He's a sweet guy who gets flustered by confrontation. But bless him, he started documenting like a lawyer's dream. Timestamped video, photos of the sign, photos of the chairs on my grass, photos of the rental truck on my field, and he texted me a short clip. In it you can hear a woman's voice telling him, "We have a contract." He politely says, "With who?" She says, "With the neighborhood association, who else?" He says, "But this is not the neighborhood, this is a private farm." "Well, it's clearly part of the community." With that flat way of speaking, like reality bends if you say it confidently, I told him to call the sheriff's non-emergency line, and he did. Meanwhile, I started scrolling back through my emails, texts and voicemails just to make sure I didn't miss something weird, but there was nothing. Zero. I call the HOA office number listed on their website and it forwards to voicemail. I leave a message saying, "You are trespassing. You need to cancel now. The sheriff has been called." I also email them, and then I call my neighbor who mows the strip along the road. He's got a better poker face than me and knows half the county. He says he will wander over. 15 minutes later he calls me, and you can hear music in the background like someone testing a Bluetooth speaker. He says the sheriff's deputy is there, talking to the clipboard lady. He puts me on speaker. I tell the deputy that I'm the owner, I did not authorize any event, and I would like all trespassers removed. The deputy, calm professional, says he understands and then needs some more information from me, which I give to him. The deputy then speaks to the HOA lady, and my neighbor later described it. The deputy asked who authorized this event. The HOA lady, who I'm now calling HOA Karen because the shoe fits, said the board approved it. The deputy said, "On someone else's land?" And she said it's part of the neighborhood because it was always used by the community. That was doing heavy lifting here, since nobody had ever hosted anything like this on my lawn. And if you want to call my occasional honey sales a community use, that's creative writing. Deputy says, "Ma'am, the owner is on the phone telling me he did not authorize this. You cannot use private property without permission." She waves a piece of paper and says it's a permit. The neighbor said it looked like a printout from Canva with their logo. The deputy looks at it and says it is not a county permit. He asked if they had any written permission from me, and she said it was understood and always done, and he tells her that they need to pack up and leave or arrests could follow. That should have ended it, but instead she went full victim. She accused my neighbor of blocking them from setting up, and she told the deputy that I had already paid vendors and families were on the way. She said that they would be liable for refunds if they cancelled, so they shouldn't have to cancel. You could practically hear the deputy counting to 10, and he said, "Liability for your contract is not the homeowner's problem. Wrap it up." As they started dragging tents back into the truck, my cousin recorded the HOA Karen telling a guy with a dolly, "This is why we needed a formal agreement, but he was never reachable." She also said, "It's not like he's using it." The condescension was thick enough to spread on toast. They vacated in about an hour, leaving ruts in my field and a charm bracelet of trash. Cupcake wrappers, a broken balloon, a few paper fans with the HOA logo, and the kicker a box of printed programs titled Spring Gala at the Farm. They had a whole schedule with photos by the barn and lawn games near the pond. I'm not gonna pretend it didn't feel invasive and gross though. It was like someone threw a party in your living room while you were out and then told you to be grateful for the attention. That night, after I talked it through with my wife, the decision was easy. I was done being nice here. The key part for a lot of these stories is documentation, and luckily for me, I had that. Cameras, photos, the deputy's incident number, copies of this program. The community page post where 2 days earlier the HOA actually had advertised Spring Gala at the Farm with a pretty picture of my pond that I know for a fact was pulled from my real estate listing from forever ago. They'd also posted a "Thank you to our neighbor for graciously partnering with us," which was news to me. When I got home, I walked the property line and there were at least a dozen visible spots where their trucks and carts churned up the grass. One of the granite posts at the driveway had a long black scuff at the tire height. The grass was mashed flat where the folding chairs had been. I'm not precious about grass, it's grass, but that field drains a certain way and ruts do matter. The barn cat had somehow adopted a balloon ribbon, which might be the only funny part. The next morning I called my insurance agent and I asked a few questions about liability. He knows me and he knows the property. He said I absolutely did the right thing calling the sheriff and I should send him a written account in case they try something weird. I wrote a timeline, I attached all the photos and videos, and then I called the HOA management company, which I got from their website, and left a crisp message. I expect a written apology, reimbursement for damages, and a signed acknowledgement that they have no authority on my property. I set a deadline, and the management company actually called me back. The woman was professional and sounded like she had already put out 9 fires that morning, and she asked for more details. I offered to email the incident number and photos. She said to copy their general counsel, but this is where things got interesting. A general counsel sounds intimidating until you realize paper is paper and facts are facts. I sent a clean packet, photos labeled and times noted. I requested some money to restore the lawn and the driveway edge and to repaint and reseal the scuffed post, which is a pain because old granite stains. I itemized everything, and I also requested quite a bit of money for my cousin's time and disruption because I had him on the property dealing with it for hours on a workday, and I attached his invoice. I politely warned that if they did not agree, I would pursue civil action and file a complaint with the state for unauthorized practice of venue operations. That's not a real crime around here, but counties do regulate events, and I was going to talk to zoning no matter what. They replied within a day with a masterpiece of corporate deflection. We appreciate your communication. We regret any misunderstanding. Our records indicate that the HOA board made arrangements in good faith based on historical community use. While we cannot accept responsibility for the entire amount requested, we are open to reimbursing $600 as a gesture of goodwill. It also asked me to sign a release. I wrote back, "There's no historical community use here. You've been informed multiple times in writing that my property is private and not under your HOA's jurisdiction. An officer of your HOA organized an event on my land without permission, invited 125 people, and attempted to hold it until law enforcement intervened. This is not a misunderstanding. This is trespass and coercion. Your $600 offer is rejected." I copied the deputy, the county zoning office, and my attorney. Small aside, by the way, I'm not a lawyer, but I do got a friend from high school who is, and he likes to golf on my field on Sundays when we don't have hay. He owed me one because I pulled his truck out of a ditch last winter. He read my packet and the HOA response and said 2 magic words: demand letter. We put together a formal demand letter. It was beautifully boring. It listed facts, it listed dates, it quoted the state statute for trespass and the one for civil conversion. We included the deputy's narrative that my neighbor had gotten via public records request, which said in black and white that the HOA president attempted to claim permission she did not have. We attached pretty color photos of their program and their sandwich board, and we itemized the damages more thoroughly, including estimates from a local landscaper to roll and fill ruts, reseed and fix the etching where their truck rolled over the gravel. We also added something my lawyer buddy suggested, a claim for interference with quiet enjoyment and a request for injunctive relief to stop them from using my property in any HOA materials or events. We set a deadline. We made it clear that if they failed to respond, we would file in county court seeking damages, attorney fees, and a court order. Before the deadline, I get an email from the HOA's general counsel. It had that clipped tone, but they'd clearly realized they were in deep. The email said that they were investigating and asked for any and all correspondence where I had told them not to use my property. I sent copies of the old emails from when they tried to rent the event space months back, and I included the screenshots of their Facebook post advertising the gala at my farm. I included an email from me to them after their initial friendly reminder letter when I told them, "Your HOA has no jurisdiction over my property." Future communications of this nature will be forwarded to the council. The receipts are the best part of any pro-revenge, but then silence for 10 days. Then 2 things happened almost at the same time: a hand-delivered letter to my door and a letter from the county zoning office. The county letter was a gem. Apparently, after the fiasco, the HOA had tried to retroactively apply for a temporary event permit on behalf of a community partner, and the zoning office denied it. The letter stated in plain terms that their application was rejected because the location is zoned A/R and the owner had not authorized any events. It also gently scolded them about proper procedure. I framed that and put it in the mudroom. The hand-delivered letter was an official notice on HOA letterhead stating that due to ongoing hostility, the HOA would be erecting a boundary fence along the property line and enforcing parking restrictions. It also said my inoperable vehicles were in violation of community standards. I read that twice to make sure I was not missing the sarcasm, and they were threatening to build a fence on a property line they don't own and to enforce parking rules on my farm. And I don't have inoperable vehicles, I just have a tractor and a pickup that they apparently think are ugly. I called my lawyer buddy and we had a laugh that probably woke up the barn cat. We decided to stop negotiating and we filed the suit. The complaint was as straightforward as we could make it. Counts: trespass, conversion, property damage, interference with quiet enjoyment, defamation by implication based on their posts about partnership, and injunctive relief to stop them from using my property in any materials or implying any partnership with them. We named the HOA as an entity, and on my lawyer's advice the president as an individual for the tort claims because her personal actions were at issue. Now, lawsuits are not cheap or fun, they take time, but here's where the pro in pro-revenge comes in. The best revenge is not just a court win, it's making sure the lessons are written in a ledger they cannot ignore. We sent discovery requests and we asked for all emails, texts and board minutes related to the farm, Spring Gala or me. We asked for the vendor contracts and we asked for their communications with the management company and the general counsel. We even asked for their Nextdoor posts and Facebook posts, and we asked for any volunteer agreements requiring staff to work the event. If they wanted to pretend this was a small misunderstanding, they were about to wade through their own paper trail. They tried a few moves first. Their counsel filed a motion to dismiss the personal claims against the president, arguing she was acting in her official capacity. But then my lawyer argued that official capacity doesn't shield a person from their own torts, especially trespass. The judge, who has probably seen every HOA spat in the county, denied their motion. He also granted our request for a temporary injunction that the HOA and its officers shall not represent, advertise or imply any event or partnership involving my property without my express written consent. While discovery churned, there was this surreal week where HOA Karen tried to play PR. She posted a community update saying the farm situation had been exaggerated by misinformation and that the board is working diligently to resolve all concerns. It included a line about our long tradition of using neighboring landscapes for our gatherings. People actually commented things like, "Wait, whose land?" and "I thought the farm was a park." That comment section turned into a crash course in property law. My neighbor, bless him, kept it simple and said, "It's private, ask permission." But then a gift. We got their board minutes, and in one meeting months before the event, HOA Karen has said, according to the minutes, "We should use the farm this year. He never says yes, but he never sues. It's public facing and he benefits from the exposure." Another board member asked, "Do we have permission?" And she said, "We will put it in the newsletter and see if he complains." That line was the gut punch. They knew. They did not ask, because if they asked and I said no, they would have to respect it. So they gambled that I would let it slide, and that one sentence turned negotiations from "how much" to "oh, you played yourself." There was also an email thread where a week before the gala, their event chair asked for a copy of the contract with the farm, and HOA Karen replied, "It's informal. We have signaled partnership. Just proceed." In the same thread, someone asked about insurance. One reply said, "Our policy covers HOA events," and someone else said, "If it's on private property, does it?" And the risk management guy typed a cautious paragraph that may have been the exact moment he grew 3 new gray hairs. They went ahead anyway. In depositions, the vibe was all brittle smiles. I'm not a petty man by default, but I'm not above enjoying the silence when someone realizes documentation exists. When asked why they did not ask me for permission, they said they did through community outreach, but when my lawyer asked what that meant, they said they posted on Facebook and put it in the newsletter. My lawyer asked if that is how they contract with vendors usually, and counsel made that face like he had eaten a lemon. When asked if they thought the deputy was wrong to remove them, HOA Karen said that he was overzealous. We offered settlement again, but the number went up. Now it included actual costs and my time plus punitive damages because of the willfulness in those minutes. Their counsel balked and he asked if we would drop the personal claims against the president in exchange for a check. My lawyer said we would consider if they made my costs whole and agreed to a consent decree that would be filed with the court and recorded so that any future HOA board would be bound by it as well. He also wanted a public apology letter to be mailed to all residents, making clear the HOA had no authority over my farm. That last one was my idea. It was not just about money, it was about closure. They refused a public apology of all the hills to die on, that's the one they picked, so we rolled towards trial. Meanwhile, the county zoning office scheduled a hearing because we had filed a complaint that the HOA was using county logos and implying partnerships they did not have, and they had to attend. So then the zoning officer read them the code like a bedtime story. It was a bureaucratic poetry. A few residents showed up and it got awkward when they learned their dues were paying legal fees for this. If you ever want to see an HOA board sweat, bring a group of retired teachers to a budget meeting. While this all simmered, life went on. I fixed the ruts, the landscaper came and rolled and receded, and the granite post scuff took hours and a special poultice. I kept receipts. My wife made jokes about starting a venue just to invoice the HOA every time they looked at our field. We had harvest and my honey jars still sold like they do. I stayed polite in public because if you've ever been in front of a judge, you know performative outrage is not your friend. Trial week arrived, county court is not TV, it's fluorescent lights, scuffed floors, a long docket and a judge who wants you to get to the point. We were maybe the most interesting case that day, which says something sad about family court that I won't get into. The judge had already read our briefs and he asked counsel to focus on the factual disputes, not legal standards he had already ruled on in pre-trial, and we called the deputy first. He was professional and brief, and he confirmed that he removed the HOA folks because the owner did not consent, and he identified HOA Karen in the courtroom. He confirmed that she presented no permission in writing. We called my neighbor and he testified about what he saw and that he has known me for years and knows the property intimately. He identified the programs and the sandwich board sign. We entered the board minutes into evidence, redacting resident names where appropriate to avoid unwanted collateral damage, and my lawyer had highlighted the "he never sues" line in a way that was probably the sweetest moment of his week. Their counsel tried to spin it though. They argued community benefit, alleged I had allowed similar use in the past. No, and that any harm was minimal. They downplayed the ruts, they said the truck didn't hit the granite post, that it just brushed it, and they claimed the deputy misunderstood the scope of the event and thought it was a random gathering rather than an organized one with kids. None of that matters for trespass. Trespass doesn't care if you had a bouncy house or a violin quartet, it cares if you had permission. Their whole case kept sliding back to misunderstanding like a bar of soap, and then HOA Karen took the stand. She was composed until the board minutes came out. My lawyer asked if she said, "he never sues." She said she didn't recall. He read the line and she said it was taken out of context. He asked for the context and she said, "We have always used that space." He asked, "Do you own that space?" And she said no. He asked, "Did the owner give you permission?" She said, "He did not say so." Silence. His eyebrow went up. Did he say yes? She started explaining newsletters and the judge cut in gently. "Ma'am, this is a yes or no question." And she said no. There's a special kind of hush in a courtroom when a case tips. It felt like a gust. My lawyer closed by talking about boundaries, not poetic, just practical, property lines, consent, costs, etc. We were not asking for the moon here, we were asking for reimbursement and a formal agreement that this ends here. The judge took a brief recess. When he came back, he spoke for maybe 6 minutes. He found for us on trespass and conversion and property damage, and he found that the actions were willful, given the board minutes, and that the HOA knew it lacked permission. He granted the injunction with specific language that the HOA and its officers are prohibited from advertising, suggesting, or implying any partnership or event involving my property without my express written consent. He ordered them to mail a corrective notice to all residents and to post it on their official page for 30 days. He ordered damages, the full amount of my repair costs, my cousin's invoice, and additional damages for willfulness plus a portion of my attorney's fees. He noted that the personal liability of the president would attach to the willful torts if the HOA did not pay. He said 30 days for payment. I'm not gonna lie, I smiled. Not in a gloaty way, more like that exhale when your back stops hurting. Their counsel immediately did the thing where he asked to stay the order for mailing the notice. The judge denied it. "If you can coordinate an event for 125 people, you can coordinate a mailing," he said, and I wrote that line down later because it made my week. 2 days later, the notice arrived in my mailbox and presumably everyone else's. It was bland but glorious. It said the HOA had attempted to organize an event on private property without permission and that a court had found this was improper and that the HOA has no authority over the farm. It apologized for any confusion and they also had to post it on their page. The comment section was spicy. You could tell who had been defending them and you could also tell who had been waiting to pounce. A few residents politely asked about legal fees and assessment impacts. The treasurer posted a careful statement about insurance participation and reserves, which is HOA speak for "we were writing a check and you will see it in your dues." Then came the fallout. It was not immediate and dramatic like a soap opera, it was measured and bureaucratic. The management company sent out a notice of a special meeting. Apparently a group of residents had collected signatures to recall the board president. That meeting was standing room only. I did not attend because I had chores and because the injunction meant I needed to be cautious about anything that could be seen as me stirring up trouble. But my neighbor did. He said it was a scene. People were angry not just about me but about other weird power plays. The vote to remove her passed and she was out. A few weeks later, the HOA elected a new board president and the new board sent me a letter, different tone entirely. They asked me to meet to reset relations and ensure mutual respect. I agreed, in my barn, at a table with coffee. They brought their lawyer, I brought mine, and we talked like adults. They asked if I would consider allowing a small photo day once a year with strict rules and a rental fee. I said maybe, but not for at least a year and only if it was a formal license with insurance certificates and a per incident fee and a cap on attendees. They said they understood, and then we drafted a one-page memorandum of understanding that basically said, "We will never assume, we will always ask, we acknowledge we have no authority over your property." We both signed it, my lawyer stamped it to be recorded with the county. That was not necessary, but it felt right. The payment arrived within the 30 days by certified check. It covered the judgment and the attorney fees portion. If you're living near an HOA that thinks it's the county, document, hold your line, and don't let anyone tell you that you're overreacting. Your land is your land. It doesn't mean that you should never share, but it means you get to decide when and how. It also means that sometimes the most satisfying revenge is not a big dramatic scene, it's a certified letter with a tracking number, a calm voice in a small courtroom, and a judge with minimal drama tells someone who steamrolls people for sport, no. And the next one is a fantastic petty revenge story, and it is titled "Coworker from Hell tried to get me to give him a ride, so I blew out of the parking lot without him." So I had a coworker who was one of the worst human beings I've ever met IRL. He was very misogynistic, calling all the women that worked their girl, demanding that they do things for him while he did F all, constantly flirting with them regardless if they were single or showed any interest, and would scream profanities in their face if they didn't fall in line. Management dragged their feet doing anything, despite the constant issues and the fact that they were aware the quality of his work was terrible. I'm not a woman, but many of my friends there were women, and when I see him yell, "Hey girl, go get me this now," and then pitch a fit like a toddler when they refused, it really pissed me off. I told people I worked with to tell him if they hit on them and wouldn't leave them alone because I cannot stand that. I heard that he had no transportation and was pressuring people to take him home. Well, one night he told me that he needed a ride home. It was midnight, me, him and the manager were the only people left at the end of the night. I told him I couldn't. He wouldn't listen. He followed me to my car anyway. I got in, locked the doors, and he started banging on my window like a psychopath, telling me I better take him home. Keep in mind it was a pitch black out in an empty parking lot with no security at midnight. He could have attacked or jumped me and stole my car, and my odds of stopping him would have been slim. So then I put the car in reverse, backed out, and blew out of that lot. The manager left ahead of me, so he was left in that lot all night all alone. There's zero public transport and probably no Uber or Lyft either. The town I drive to for work is completely car dependent and so anti-public transport, sidewalks don't even exist. I didn't feel bad about it either. Your transportation is your problem. He's not a minor, he's 27 years old, he's a big boy who can figure out his business. You can believe that he didn't ask me for a ride again or F with me. And yeah guys, thank you for watching, please don't forget to subscribe and I will see you again tomorrow.